Welcome to the Marvy Woods Football Academy podcast. In this season, I'm going to be speaking to academy managers from the Premier League, Championship, League One, League Two, and some Scottish clubs. As an academy parent myself, I want to bring some insight into how these academies are being run. I find that it's easy to approach coaches. I hear from players, ex-players, and parents on many platforms about their experiences in academies. But I do not hear from academy managers. This is why I want to do this season. If you think first team managers have playing staff of 18 to 25, whereas academy managers have a playing staff of over 100. That could be from the under 9s to the under 18s. These are people who are so powerful, but they just seem like these men in grey suits or women in grey suits that you just never get to hear from. So what I want to do is I want to bring to you, the listener, what they think, what they want to sign, and what they are looking for in these academies. So if you like this episode, don't just watch and keep it to yourself. Subscribe to see more and spread the word. Welcome to the Marvy Woods Football Academy podcast. Today I am joined by a really special guest because I'm excited about this one. From Scottish Cup winners Aberdeen, the Academy Director, Mr. Stuart Glennie. Thanks for joining me, Stuart.
No, thank you for having me on, Marvy. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I'm very intrigued about the Scottish side of things, so I'm glad you joined me on this episode. What I normally like to do is start by going back and working my way to where we are today, just so everyone gets to know who you are, not just you're an academy director. So with that said, who was the first professional academy that you played for as a footballer?
Yeah, I was more that I kind of played the professional bit in the lower leagues in Scotland, played in the League Two. At that time, although it was Division 3, I was a club called Forfar Athletic, because at the back at that time when I started playing, and I was a young boy, and at that time, that's when it was called like S-form signings. It was more or less schoolboy signings there. So I signed with them, and I was with the club for about 9 years. Unfortunately, several ACL injuries, a couple of ACL injuries later, and yeah, I had to retire playing probably in my mid-20s, really. I had to kind of retire from playing, and then that's when I kind of looked at going down the coaching pathway. So, yeah.
What age did you go to Forfar?
You could sign kind of S-form signings there when you were still at school, around about 16 years of age. So I'd been playing with some of their youth teams. It just so happened it was one of my good friends from Bank, a guy called Dwayne. We were sitting in school one day, secondary school, and the geography teacher who was a teacher that we used to get away with doing much work with because all he talked about was football. So, and he happened to show us this thing where you could go down and train in the kind of holiday period with Forfar Athletics. So I thought, why not? And then on the back of that, you got offered, those that did well got offered back and was signed. So I was about 16 years of age, played there. Then I was farmed out to a junior team whilst I was there. And then I played it. It was good the first season when I played professional, actually played with the first team, was great because it was the kind of first time we went to 3 divisions of Scotland, with a 3rd division, and we were lucky to win the Scottish 3rd division with Forfar. So it was great. They surrounded it with a lot of experienced boys, and then they had young boys that came in with me that weren't that great at football, but we could kick people, so that kind of helped a wee bit at that time. So yeah, and that was it. And but yeah, my career there was cryptic with injuries. It was just injury after injury with regards to the knees.
What position did you play?
I was a centre back or right back normally.
That's brilliant. So you said you dealt with injuries. How was that for you? Like coming back from injuries and mentally, how did you cope with that?
Well, it was very, very difficult because obviously early on I had a couple of knee injuries with regards cartilage repairs and stuff like that. And it's not like this day, even now. It's back then it was the recovery periods and etc. to get back from these injuries was a lot longer than it was now. And my first ACL injury, that was probably the length of time you're out now, still the same. 9 to 12 months out with an injury like that, and just constant rehab. So it was very, very difficult. I had a bit of travel as well, not too far. I was probably travelling for about an hour for each day, but I was going down to a guy at Beacon at the time. He was renowned for rehab. So I was going down and doing that. So that was really, really tough. But it just felt like once I come back after that first injury, I never ever felt the knee was right, and there was always little niggling things, and you tried to persevere as long as you could, but it just wasn't possible.
So you said you branched off into coaching after that. How did that transpire?
Yes, it's probably well, it's always a story I probably tell when I've been for job interviews. But I actually, when I was at school, I wanted to play professional football. I wanted to be a football player. That's all I wanted to do. But in the back of mind, through my family, there was a lot of carpenters and joiners, and that was an avenue I went down as well. So I was playing part-time football, but I was actually became a qualified joiner, carpenter work as well. So I did that for 4 years. And it happened to be one day I was up, I'd done all my training. I was probably in my first year of getting paid really good money. And I just remember being up a scaffolding in the snow, rain, cold, and I just made that decision that day. I remember coming down off the scaffolding into my car and away, and I remember the guy I was working with phoning me later on and saying, "What are you doing?" I says, "Nah, that's me." It was just the timing of it, though. I'd already started, because I was injured at Forfar, I'd already started getting involved in the youth team there, doing a bit of coaching with the youth team. I'm saying coaching, probably just helping the coaches more or less. So I was starting to enjoy that because I had an idea at that time. I'm thinking, right, I'm not going to be able to continue playing here. And then that day I came down from that scaffolding in the middle of nowhere. I was like, right, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to do sports coaching. And it was just so happened I was too late in like going for an HNC or HND, and I'd left school quite early. So I ended up having to do what you call a national certificate, which is kind of even the level below for 9 months. And then I kind of went and did my HNC, HND from there. And that's when I got into coaching. But whilst I was doing that, I was starting to work with Aberdeen Football Club back then. They've got a really good community programme up here, doing holiday coaching and summertime coaching, Easter coaching, going out to the local areas and coaching the young kids. So I kind of got into the coaching at that stage. So it was good. It was good. Made the right decision, I think, coming down off that scaffold that day.
One random decision just changed the whole course of your life.
Exactly.
That's crazy. So you said you from Aberdeen?
Yeah, I'm just from a town just outside Aberdeen, Aberdeenshire, a town called Bankery, yeah.
Oh, right. When you qualified, did you start straight to Aberdeen, or did you work in other clubs in Scotland?
I've been doing the sort of community coaching in my time I was at university, etc. And then I went, my first full-time job in football was probably with Aberdeen Football Club, but that was with the community department then, probably 23 years ago when I started there, and I came into the community, and we had this community program. It was going to, again, it was more or less where I was working part-time before. I was now full-time, and I was one of the full-time community coaches, going in and coaching full-time in the schools, etc. And again, doing holiday programs. So I probably did that for about 5 years, and I was kind of partly employed by the Scottish FA as well. So we were obviously helping to deliver the coach education courses locally for people that were starting their journey to coaching. So that kind of was the kind of start of that. But then I'd always wanted to go into management, football management. So me and a former colleague, we went to football management. It was kind of more non-league football. Sort of started off with junior football for a couple of years, and then we went to what is our non-league equivalent up here in Aberdeen. It's called the Highland League. We were kind of management there for a couple of years. So I did that for a couple of years as well, and I was still working. I'd actually left Aberdeen to take up a role as an active schools coordinator with the local authority, mainly because I wanted to go into management. The Scottish FA at that time didn't allow you to work with the Scottish FA and then be involved in football management. So I kind of did that. And then once I came out of the management, I was back working at Aberdeen Football Club as a kind of part-time coach, working with the younger age groups. I was working with under 12s at that time. So guys now that would be kind of 2000 year groups. So they'll be hitting 25 now, some of those guys. One of the ones that was at that time was a guy, Jack McKenzie, who's just left us to go all the way down to Plymouth, just left Aberdeen recently to join Plymouth. So Jack was kind of around about that age group. So that was kind of the part-time coaching. And then I was involved that. And then I had an opportunity not long after that for about 5 years where I went to the Scottish FA, went back working with them. And I don't know if you're aware of the performance schools there is in Scotland.
No. This is why
So
I
what
want to
there
do
is-
this, to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's 6 Scottish FA performance schools across the whole of Scotland. And the idea of that was to really get the talented kids that we've got in Scotland is to get them more hours with the ball, more practice, etc. So, because he looked at other countries, Belgium did it all those years ago, where they were trying to get specific programs in, so that people are more or less getting more contact with the ball, more hours. So I went and took on the school that's based in Aberdeen here, and what we really do is we recruit or identified, have a trial process, which is quite a long trial process. We would select players who would come into the first year of high school, as we call it up here, secondary school, the first year of that. So we would select players that would come in. Now, some of these guys would be travelling from all over Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire, and they would come to that school, and that would be their school now at Hazelhead Academy, just along the road here. And they
Full
would come
time?
out yes, they would come to that school full time, and
What
they would
age
train
group?
with me.
What age?
So from first year secondary school, so you're probably talking about under 13s, and we would commit to them for 4 years as a Scottish FA. Now, a lot of these players would at that time be signed to Aberdeen Football Club as well. There would be some grassroots players we would select, but they would come and train with us every single day for 5 days in the school, and then 3 or 4 nights a week they would go and train with their professional club as well. So we've ultimately went from them training 3 or 4 nights a week, times a week, to training 9 times a week, plus their game at a weekend. So that was some of the SFA. So I was with the SFA for that for about 12 years, but probably the last 5 years of that, I was involved with the national youth squads there for a start as a kind of assistant coach. And then that developed into me being the head coach of the Scotland under 16s and under 15s teams for the last couple of years. So I really, really enjoyed that. And then kind of an opportunity came up. Gavin Levy, who left here last year to take up the head coach role at Swansea, Gavin approached me about the head of coaching role that was at the club at that time. So yeah, it was a club that I've always supported and my local club, and it was a difficult decision because I love working with the Scottish FA and working with some of the best players in the country, but it was a really good opportunity for me to come back to the club in that role. So yeah, that was kind of my pathway in getting here.
That's brilliant. Thank you for that information, because this is what I really want to learn, how you guys operate over there. So how many days do you guys train?
Yeah, if you're 10 age, also we're training every single day. If you take each age group, the younger age groups will train a minimum of 3 times a week, but some of the older ones will be 4 times a week. That might be an extra gym session, etc. So they would be 4 times a week, and then they'd play a game on a Saturday or a Sunday. So we've got training on every single night when we're here from the academy. So that's probably from a pre-academy right through to our kind of under 17s team. They would train 3 nights plus an additional night, and then they would either play on a Saturday or Sunday at the weekend. Our development team, who are back in at the moment, so that's those players that are full-time at the club. They started back in with the club last week, so they're obviously training every week. They're building up to their first pre-season game on Saturday this week, so they're back in at the moment. There's never really a gap because our young teams from up to kind of pre-academy right through under 16s, they finished their kind of season 9 days ago, and then the development team are back in 3 days later. So you don't really have a spell in the season where you're stopped. So it's always kind of always go.
Wow. Do you guys have categories? Is it run by the SFA? How does it work?
Yeah, well, what happens in Scotland is it's called the Club Academy Scotland. And a bit like in England, where they set criteria that clubs have to meet certain criteria to be a Cat 1 club or a Cat 2 club. Very similar here in the fact that we've got different levels like elite, performance tier, etc. So we have to meet certain. I think now this year, I think if I'm saying right, there'll probably be 9 clubs that would be in elite category. Now, to be in the elite club, certain criteria you have to meet, like the number of teams that you have taken part in Club Academy Scotland, the amount of full-time staff you have, part-time staff, qualifications of staff, etc. So every year, any club in Scotland could apply to be an elite club as long as they meet that criteria, and they've submit that criteria. So we've always been an elite club, and so we've got we've got like pre-academy, which would be kind of under 8s. That are kind of pre-academy session. We've got centres and trial days that happen around Aberdeenshire, but they would then come in to become our pre-academy centres, which we have about 5 or 6 pre-academy centres where the kids will come in and coach with us, and we'll have a skills-based programme. From that group, we will then select the players that will then become our under 9s as such. It'll still be quite a good big group of players at that time, under 9s. They're still, again, just playing games locally, etc. And then eventually they would then become our Aberdeen FC under-10s team. And again, they would start to travel a bit around Scotland and play some of the other elite teams. But really, the Club Academy Scotland main programme across the Scottish FA starts from kind of under 11. So you've got under 11s, under 12s, under 13s, under 14s, under 15s, under 17s, right through. So, and obviously the big thing for us, we're Aberdeen, we're based up in the northeast. So every second week for us is travel. It's a lot of travel. You're talking 2.5 hours to 3 hours to get to games for young kids. And there's lots of debate right now across Scotland and everywhere that young kids shouldn't be travelling 3 hours to play a game of football. I agree with that, but you know what? We stay in Aberdeen. If you don't want to travel 3 hours to play a game of football to play against the best clubs in the country, you'll have to move from Aberdeen. So I'm not always on that boat, and people jump on, and former players and people that are very high up in the game right now, which a lot of respect for, but saying that, yeah, I agree, players shouldn't be travelling that distance, but sometimes for us to be able to play against the standard of teams we need to play against, we have to travel. Unfortunately, it's just the logistics of it. We're not in England, we're not in Glasgow where they could maybe just travel half an hour to play different teams and we have to travel. So I always say to people, we are where we are. We embrace it. If you don't want to embrace it, you have to move. As simple as that.
But also it's preparation for becoming a pro. It's what you're gonna have to do. I know I understand of the age group, but it's what you're gonna have to do when you're a pro anyway.
Yeah, I think there is. I think obviously what a lot of the argument is that a 10-year-old or 11-year-old shouldn't be spending 2.5 hours on a bus when they could be at home playing football. Yeah, but I think what people realise is that every time a kid's they're not playing football every minute of the day. You can't just all of a sudden pick that 2.5 hours on a bus on a Saturday is when they would be kicking a ball, because they're probably leaving here at 7:30 in the morning. So yeah. I'm all for that, getting kids out in the street and playing. But it's just been, I think sometimes it's just easy to say that we shouldn't have kids doing that and we shouldn't have them doing this. Sometimes we just have to look at the logistics of our country and what it is, and yeah, just embrace it, really. Just embrace it.
So what clubs do you play in the elite division that you're in?
Yeah, well, at the moment we'd have like Dundee United, Rangers, Celtic, Hearts, Hibs, Motherwell. I'm going to miss a team here and somebody will come back. And Queen's Park have been involved in that. Obviously, they've cut back in their academy a bit as well. Hamilton, Accies have been involved in that again. Obviously, they're now League 2, if I'm right, or League 1, but they've obviously still had a very, very good academy over the years, and they've met that criteria. So it doesn't necessarily go with what league you're in with regards to your first team, as long as you can meet that criteria and you're trying to do that. So yeah, they've probably changed the programme a bit this year as well, because we kind of went 13s, 14s, 15s, 16s. They kind of went almost a dual age band. So we go 15s now, we kind of go a dual age band of a kind of an under 16s, under 17s team this year as well. So they'll play in that. So there's not as many fixtures organised this year. Now, we're probably a country that's quite unique in that the Scottish FA do organise a games programme for us. There's a lot of countries that they don't do that, and it's up to the clubs themselves to do that. So I think we're lucky from that point of view. What they've tried to do this year is maybe not have as many games organised and to put the kind of onus on the clubs to maybe organise their own games programme, which again becomes a bit tougher for us because if we're down in Glasgow, we could jump in a bus and be in Newcastle. I'm not very good in my geography, but a couple of hours and play a game. Whereas for us to go down to play English teams, which we want to do, we want to bring that back to our programme, talking 3 hours to Glasgow plus another 3-4 hours. So there's opportunities for us to trying to think outside the box a little bit and be different in teams that we play. We still play a lot of local teams up here, and it's great have that connection because the local teams that we have in this area in Aberdeen are fantastic. And at the end of the day, that's where we're getting a lot of our players from. Right. So we want to create that partnership. We try to go abroad. Every team that we have has an opportunity to go and play abroad in tournaments as well. And that adds to our games programme. Obviously costs money, but would you believe what you get round abroad? You get people contacting Aberdeen Football Club to say, look, we'd love you to come to play in our tournament in Holland or Belgium. And what you find with a lot of these places is that quite often it's grassroots clubs that are organising these, but they have funding. And so they often say, look, if you pay for your transport, we'll pay for your accommodation, etc. These tournaments actually work out. It's actually, would you believe, it's cheaper for us to go away and play in a tournament in Belgium and Germany than it is for us to get a bus to go down and play in England. So it's just trying to work out ways of doing that. And it's all about trying to give kids different experience, different opposition, different travel conditions, going away on a European trip where they're all together, just different experiences. And a bit of putting people out their comfort zones as well, something different. So just a fresh challenge for everybody. I think it's good.
What has been the benefits that you've seen from those tours with your academy?
I think it's a benefit for a lot of things. It's funny, we had a kind of 2-day planning meeting the last couple of days at a local hotel, Thainstone House. It was great, and we were talking about things that you've just mentioned there. And we've got a wellbeing officer at the club, Richard Taylor, who is not somebody who just wants to come in all the time when we're having to deal with problems or issues or stuff. But Richard was mentioning that when he goes away in these tournaments, we get Richard to go away with the younger squads. Sometimes it's crazy because I sometimes think, God, I couldn't imagine my kid when he was 9 year old's going away in a tournament with a group of people and a group of coaches, and they're dealing with my kid going abroad, and they're going abroad and they're staying in a hotel room with another 9 year old. I'm thinking, God, but we do that. But like Richard said, it was good for him going away, and he gets to know the families a bit more. He gets to know the children a bit more. Sometimes in some situations, it's the first time that some children have been abroad and they've never had to deal with that. It's the first time quite often that they've been away from home. So it's all those little bits that it's different, but nothing changes in the fact when we go away in a bus and go down to Glasgow, we expect the children and coaches to act and behave in a certain manner and promote Aberdeen Football Club, just like they do when they go away, when they go abroad. So these trips are great. They're good for that, but they're also good for really building links with clubs. We have a tournament that we run. This will be the third year this year, called the Craig Brown Tournament. Craig Brown Memorial Tournament, and since September this year it'll be an under-16 tournament, but this year we've got Liverpool coming up, we've got Newcastle, Preston, we've got Lillestrøm coming across, Pauk, people that we've sometimes met through these tournaments. We've now got them coming here in the hope that we get links to go there. So the links that you can have with these things is very good, because we want to develop that more with partnerships so that we can very much share information and develop, because we're all trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
We're all trying to produce football players that can hopefully play in our first team.
What does youth development mean to you?
I think if you go to every club, ultimately everyone will always say that it is about producing players for the first team. And I don't think we can get away from that. We'll probably find in Scotland, with regards, you're talking the financial side of things, it's very difficult to make a youth academy in Scotland self-funding, in the fact that you do need to have those transfer fees. You need to have those big transfer fees that allows you to bring money into the club and bring money into the youth academy. So we understand that. But sometimes when you step back, it's a whole wider and bigger thing than that as well. For us, it's about developing people. We were just working on our culture yesterday in our review meeting, things we want to develop with regards to culture. What do we expect an Aberdeen Football Club player to look like? But not just a player. We don't want to keep calling them players. They're young people. How do we want them to develop? How do we want to help them? Talking about manners. How do we, when somebody meets an Aberdeen Football Club player in the garage when they go down to Dundee and we're going on a trip, but what is the perception of people when see that? So we want to be able to help that. So we think it's a whole bigger thing. But Marvy, we have to be honest, and again, it's a discussion we've had, is that we are open and honest, and I think parents do realise that. But at the end of the day, that it is going to be a small amount. And I know we've seen lots of things in papers about stats and etc. But what we need to realise is that it's not a boot camp that we run. I read a stat recently in the paper, not so much a stat, but it was talking about the percentage of young players that don't make it into football clubs. So if you took a percentage of how many players are at a club and how many players actually go and make it into full-time football. But then I'm saying, look, we don't do the same with a local boys club. We don't go, right, okay, I've been with this local boys club since I've been 10 years old and I've got to 17 and now there's not a pathway there, but I'm going to go elsewhere. They've still enjoyed that pathway. And 99% of the people, I would say, in our pathway will have enjoyed that as well. But we're not always going to give them that. So I think sometimes we then get caught up and say, right, yeah, there's a small percentage that go. That is going to be the case. But what we need to remember is that we've still, over these 10, 12 years they've been with us, we've given them European trips, we've looked after them, we've given them sports science, we've given them nutrition, we've given them physiotherapy. We want to look after them. So it's about not looking too far ahead. It's about enjoying the journey that you have during that, but it's still trying to remember there's a good chance I'm not going to become a professional football player. So I think it's people realising that. Sometimes you put that message across, but I think it maybe they hear it, but they're probably thinking, nah, that's not going to be us. It's going to be fine. We're going to be okay.
look, we all know there is a small possibility, right? But promoting that message sometimes it's like, yeah, okay, there's a small possibility for a child being born. I mean, there's always going to be a positive and negative. Like you just said, why don't you enjoy the actual process of it all? Obviously educate, but if you want to just start focusing on that, then what's the point of anything? Because there is a possibility as well that that little percent someone could make it. So don't just dismiss the whole process of what you're doing now.
I think so. I think it's just that they don't like calling it the industry, but it is. It's a football. It's easy to be like that. But at the end of the day, we're still providing a good experience. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that every kid that has left our academy has found it great, because everybody's different in the fact that they go to leave. That some won't want to admit that it's been good because we've maybe had to make a decision, which honestly, regardless, that's what I find difficult about the football and being involved in it, is because I've lost so many friends, parents of kids that I've known that I've classed as good friends, people that I've worked with, etc., that you have to then make decisions, or maybe other people within the club have to make decisions. We all have to be part of that, but it's difficult because you lose friends and you lose, but it's very, very difficult. I just want people to try and enjoy the process. Now, definitely we'll still have people that come in at times and maybe they've not been enjoying the journey. We want to try and change that. But you also have children who thrive on that. You thrive on that because there's no doubts about it. There's a local boys club along here, Westlake Boys Club, absolutely fantastic club. But at the end of the day, if you're with Aberdeen Football Club or you're with Westlake Boys Club, there's definitely more pressure here at Aberdeen. Now, we're not trying to make that pressure. Sometimes it's maybe brought on elsewhere, and some people will disagree with that and say, no, you are. Well, no, we're trying to make it as enjoyable and as we can make it. But ultimately, there's going to be that pressure, because if players are not performing, or we don't feel, or there could be somebody else that comes in that's better, unfortunately, we have a job that we have to do that. But we've just got to try and make sure that process when they're here is good. The process that when they leave the club, it's to try and make that the best we can. And again, we've had a lot of good feedback on that. But again, we've had some individuals that haven't liked that process. So we don't sit here and say that everything we do is great. We're trying to improve on it. And when I do ask parents for feedback, some will want to give me feedback, some won't want to speak to me ever again, which is difficult, but that can be very, very tough.
So yeah, so in that instance, you find release and retain periods. How do you cope with that emotionally?
It is tough. It is very, very tough, because we have to make decisions. I think it can become, I think sometimes for me, it disappoints me things that become personal. Now, if I'm on the other side, I always try to think, and I've got young children as well. My eldest son now is actually coaching at the club here as well. But when he was younger, he came for trials for the SFA performance school that I was in, but I didn't select him for the school. So you can imagine it was, and I'm not saying that I've been there and I've been in that process, but I realise I always try to think the decisions that we make, not necessarily decisions we make, because you've sometimes got to take away that emotional side, and we've got to make a decision. And the decisions we make, of whether it's a player leaving the club, it's not just one coach that makes that. The coaches that are at each age group will see that players more than anyone. But we've got a team of full-time staff here that we have to sit down. We've got to make these decisions. So it is difficult to take the emotion away from it. We try to do it the best we can, and there's different ways. We've got strategies that we have to follow to make sure that happens. But sometimes we get so far through that process, and a parent will just say, no, I don't want any more. And that's totally fine. So we're trying to make it, but it's never easy. One thing I would say is that, again, going back to when we're talking about players and the pathway, and it's not always going to be there. We've got a couple of people here at the club right now who are 25 this year, two in particular, Zach Ellis, a goalkeeper who plays non-league football, Andy Watt, again, non-league football at the moment. They came through our whole pathway. They were in the club from 10 years old, came right through, didn't get selected for full-time football, but they're back coaching with us. So we've got that whole journey when people do want to come back. Even some of those kids that want to kick their backside at times, that they're wanting to come back and coach with the club and get involved. So they've enjoyed it. And I think there's something for them to come back and put that experience across to the children, and we want to do in the parents, and go, right, yeah, we want you to have this pathway in football to full-time football, but you might not have that. You might end up going into part-time football, like these two coaches here who are now coaching for the club, etc. So there's going to be those different pathways. So it's always difficult. I always try and step back and go, right, if I'm a parent, how would I expect this to be dealt with? Now, maybe from outside looking in, it doesn't always look like that, but it can look like we're making personal decisions, but it's certainly not the case.
Mate, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when you turned your boy away. Mother's face looking at you and going, all right, okay.
Yeah. No, it was. But again, that was just, you're it's very difficult when you're talking about your own son, but you're just trying to be professional.
Yeah.
Not just my opinion again as well. There's other coaches and people have opinions, but again, he's developed and found a pathway and done very well. So, yeah.
We've talked about development. What's your take on results or development? What side are you on?
No, it's very much for us, it's about development. We've kind of changed our pathway and our structure in the club at the moment. It's funny, we had a coaches, what we call a coaches in service day just a couple of weeks ago, and one of the area I was talking about was winning versus development. And we have very much went down a route. I think the club have always been like that, but we've over the last year and a half, 2 years, and the time I've been in is very much more specific on individual development. Because even if we've had an under 18s development team for a number of years, this year we've not ran with a full-time development team. All of our players, that I touched earlier on before we came on here, was that we've probably got about 15, 16, 17 players now, but we're putting them all out on loan this year, even our first year apprentices, just because we feel they've come through the system and they've played 14s, 15s, 16s, and then they come in, they're still playing that kind of club academy Scotland football, but we just feel that they've maybe played that for too long, and for allowing the better pathway for us to our first team and develop them, we feel they maybe need to get the opportunity for them to get into adult football a bit sooner. So very much as to be before, we were maybe having to recruit the players based on our actually developing a team, but it has to be about individuals. It has to be about individuals, about developing individuals. So I think we went down that route of very much concentrating on individuals and development. And then I don't know if we lost the fact that I hate losing games. Absolutely hate losing games.
I was waiting for that.
That's okay. That's okay. What's never going to happen is that we're not going to have a situation where we're going to change the formation of the team or we're going to change a player because it's affecting the result of a game. Players have to learn to deal with that. What I was asking the coaches the other week there is, can we still have that desire? Can we still bring that desire, will to win, determination to win, pressure to win as being an Aberdeen Football Club player, but still develop players? That was a question I asked them when we had to debate it. And everyone knows that you can, but sometimes I think in between we've maybe lost that wee bit to go, right, okay, yes, it's about developing and you doing better, but we still want to win.
Right.
But we have to do it in the right way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it's interesting if you're focused on development, and let's say the first team manager, they die on the sword of results, right? If you're not winning for the club, obviously I know it's a league and stuff, but if you're not winning for the club, then you get dismissed. So what's your take on, okay, you're losing 10 games on the trot, boys' heads are dropping. What is the development in that?
The development in that is players that progress and become better and move on to the next stage. I think even if you know that you've got players, now that's difficult because you could be at the first team levels on, you could still see individual players that could be developing, but you're not getting the results. So we realise you're not getting the time there. But I think ultimately, if we take a group of our under 15s right now, ultimately we've got to say, I keep saying to the guys, if we continue to develop them individually, and again, we're not talking about every single one of the under 15s going to full-time football. If that's 4, 5, 6 of them are getting to full-time football, but they've developed, if we continue to develop and make them better, I think collectively as a team, you will get better as well. But we can't lose that fact that you have to believe in what you're doing, is that players are developing and getting better, etc. We've had seasons where, not last season, the year before, where we won the under 18s league, we won the under 8. We're in the final of the under 18s Scottish Cup, we won the under 16s league and cup, etc. So all these things are great, but it's still about developing players. So it's trying to get that balance. There's no doubts about it. And again, that's not me being negative towards year groups, whatever. Every single time in football, you have different scenarios that come through. Like when I was at national team, Scottish FA, you would have a year group that comes through that people say, oh, this is a talented year group. And then you'd have a next year group and people would go, it's not such a strong group. What? Because we're not winning games? But you might still have 2 or 3 of the top best players in Scotland that could go on and play for the Scotland A squad. So I think it's always just trying to remember that. And it can be tough because coaches are the same as me, that they probably think about that, about wanting to win games? Is that then being assessed based on whether they win a game or not? No, we're going to be assessed on players that move on, that move into our first team, or players that we move on and you trade and make money for Aberdeen Football Club and make money for themselves as a young player. So that's what we'll be. So there has been a real focus on us to do that. But it was interesting you asked, but that was the other week. It was like, can we still win and can we still develop? And I'm not saying the difference is you might not win, but you've got to have that will and desire to win. That's the difference. It's not about, it's okay, it's just about us developing players here. It doesn't matter if we don't win, it's okay. No, it 100% does matter, but not to the detriment of developing players.
That takes a lot of patience.
It does take a lot of patience, yeah. It's even when I'm outside of the pitch and when we get beaten a game, I'm trying to show that I'm not getting frustrated, but you still have to keep doing it. If I take a scenario where we want the guys to take the ball and play from the back. Now, some people might then say, oh, what's the point in taking the ball from the back? And I'm not saying our current first team, but if your first team don't do that, does it really matter about that? The reason we're taking the ball at the back is we're trying to make the players technically better. We're trying to make the players have the ball more. We're trying to put the players in situations where they have to come up with solutions. Not necessarily about the style of play, but it's about developing them individually. Now, that same player might receive the ball and he might give away a goal. He might receive it from the goalkeeper. He might do the same again. We ain't changing. He might have to improve his technique to get better at that, or he might have to improve his problem solving to get better at that. But that ain't going to change. We're going to continue to do that. The last thing I would then want we've just lost a goal, and now the coach is shouting, right, goalkeeper, take it up the pitch. Let's get it long and play. No, we've got to be patient with that. And is that difficult? Yeah, it's difficult, especially for a lot of players that have played the game before. You high level are coming into that where they've come from an environment of it's very much about being winning, like you say, but coming into that and going, yeah, we want to be relaxed, but we still want to have enough pressure on them that we still want to have that will to win.
So that boy is, the keeper passes to him. You let a goal in from that because they're being pressed. It happens again. This time now, parents are on the side going, what is going on? Like, Stuart needs to sort this out, and his coaches or whatever. How do you deal with that kind of side of things as well?
It's quite a common thing. I think as people have been in our academy longer, they realise that that's the situation. We're probably quite lucky, we are lucky with the parents we have here, and the fact that not all the time, that they know that they can't be shouting on and expecting, because they know what we're trying to do. But they probably need to inform them even further what we're trying to do and what we're trying to do with regards to developing players. But they understand that, because they could come to a club, they've just joined our club recently, and they've maybe come from somewhere where it was normal for people to continually shout, for people to shout when the kids get the ball, tell them what to do, etc. It just takes all the decision making away. So we've been quite lucky with that. If there is situations where it's not happening, we will take in parents and we'll speak to them and we'll talk to them about it and say, look, no, that's not what it's about. But there's no doubts about that. I know with my son plays grassroots football as well. My other son plays football, and they're the same. I know at the side when you feel it yourself. If your kid makes a mistake and you lose a goal, you know the other parents and people are a wee bit.
You can feel the heat, right?
It's just part of football. Yeah, you do, because you feel, not because I'm worried about what parents think.
No eye contact.
Yeah, my son, and he's made a mistake, but that shouldn't be a problem. So yeah, I think we'll always have that. It's always one of those contentious issues across all the clubs, and we're doing that when we're trying to let the parents just to let them play and get on with it and not making decisions for them. You can still see some players right now, as soon as they make a mistake, what's the first thing a young player normally does?
Heads drop.
They look to a parent, look across to see what they're doing. I learned my lesson many years ago when I can't remember what happened. I remember my son had made a mistake and it was a game, and all I've done is I've literally, and I swear I was not in any way disappointed. I must have turned around at that point to look at somebody, and he said to me after the game, "Oh, you weren't happy, were you?" And I was like, "Why?" And he says, "Well, I lost a goal. It was my mistake." And when I turned around to look at you, I was looking the other way. So he's thinking I've probably turned around in disgust. But it's little bits like that you're just. So now, if anything like that happens, he looks over, I just give him a thumbs up and say. Now, some people might think, "Oh no, you shouldn't be. You should be shouting." And nah, I'm not getting involved in that. They know themselves. I tend to find now, I wasn't great at that, Marvy, at the start with my young kids. I probably couldn't wait till I get in the car to say, "Oh, why did you do this? Why did you do that?" And I remember one time he'd come into the car and I tried to change, and it took me a long time to change, to be fair. I remember coming in the car and I just said, well done. And then we're driving along the road, and I remember looking in the mirror, and he's still sitting there looking in the mirror.
Waiting.
Because he's, what's the next bit? And honestly, I'm not afraid to say that was the time that I thought, right, I need to be different. And see, when I don't say anything now, normally when we are then sitting having tea later on that night, he'll bring up something. Oh, Dad, do you remember that time that I did that? So, yeah, people just feel like you can see it. I can see it with parents. Sometimes you can just almost see they can't get in the car quick enough to be able to let them know. It's the wrong time, the wrong place. They don't need it. All they need is us guys, whether you think you're a coach or you know football, just be a parent. Well done. And they'll let you know when they want to let you know if they've thought they did something wrong, etc. So it's so difficult to do, but I think I've managed to get there with it now.
So you said something really critically interesting to me in that scenario. You said, like, if the player is being pressed and let's say they give away a goal and you're shouting over, the guys from grassroots come over and they're shouting over, like, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. You said it takes away the decision. And I find that very interesting. Do you feel that decision-making process of the player deciding from themselves what is best, what's the best solution, without constantly being told, do this or do that, even from a coach, being told from a coach, is that where the development comes from? Their decision-making?
Yeah, I think so. I think we often talk about don't coach when they're on the ball. Like, I'm not saying that we're always 100% that's the case, but I tend to not say coaching the ball. You could have a scenario where, for example, the goalkeeper has his ball in the hand, and you might get the coach shouting at who the ball needs to. Now, it still happens with us, with some coaches. I'm not saying this is perfect, but the goalkeeper's now seen something. So we're standing on the side of the pitch here. The goalkeeper's standing 50, 60 yards away from us, facing a completely different direction, sees a completely different picture from us. And how do we know that the picture he sees is not better than what we see? So the amount of times that you see a goalkeeper going to put it one way and you hear the coach, no, and you hear parents shouting, and he might go the opposite way and play a different direction. That's a decision. He's then been influenced by that, and he's not been allowed to make his own decision. We've probably, in the scenario we're in the environment we're in, we don't allow that. Hey, it'll still happen. And that's where if someone's got to pull on a parent and say, look, you need to just let her know. And they're not doing it in any way. They're probably trying to help the child. Sometimes they're often not helping the child. And sometimes they can be telling the wrong information as well. Not always. And I'm not saying it, except we might have asked them to do a certain thing. For example, if we've maybe went to a game and said, look, for this game, we're going to sit off. We're not going to press so high. And then you get someone shouting, press, yes. And they're going chase them. So it's that scenario. But yeah, we try and think about not coaching too much when they're on the ball. Let them make the decision. Let them see what they need to see. Then once they've done something, so in that scenario that we've talked about, that the centre-backs got caught, once it's then happening, we might shout and say, it might be, Marvy, see next time, come back out, come back the goalkeeper and we'll go out the other side. Don't worry about it. But yeah, so coach after it rather than, and sometimes you don't need to coach because they know. There's nothing worse when you know what you've done and you can see a player looking over at the coach going, I know. And then you get the coach going, who's he talking to? And I'm going, no wonder, because he knows what he's done. Mm. It's like a goalkeeper. A goalkeeper lets something through his arms and it goes into the net. And then you've got a goalkeeping coach shouting on, you need to. He doesn't need that. Yeah. He knows what he's done wrong. So it's just getting that balance. It's never easy, but tend to, as much as possible, try not coach when they're on the ball, encouragement, etc. But if it's anything it needs to be, you think maybe it needs to be addressed or helped or coached, maybe do it afterwards. What's
your take on Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 signings at Aberdeen?
Yeah, I think it's been such a big thing for many years with regards to quarter, and I think it's not just a case now of saying Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, because you could have any type of player in each of those quarters who is very much difficult in their physical maturity, not just because of their age. We could have somebody who's born in Q4 who's still physically very much mature, as opposed to somebody that's so. I think there's a bit of both, and I think yes, we have considerations when we're selecting players. And now that might come down to at the end of the day, sometimes we might not only be able to select a certain amount of players to come into our under 10s team. We might have to make decisions based on that. And we'll look at everything. We'll look at technical and not so much, a little bit of the tactical, but not much at that age. But you then start looking at things. You do look at that and go, right, yeah, these two guys they're quite similar and they've got lots of good attributes. And then you go, right, okay, this one's a Q1 and this one's a Q4. And sometimes before that would then sway it and people would go, oh yeah, well, he's a Q4. He's still got 9 months of. So I don't think it's as simple as looking at it like that right now. I think it's important it's considered, but it is about looking at the actual physical maturity as well of where they're at, because as you know, you could be in Q4 and you could be physically really, really developed, but you could be in Q1, you could be physically developed. Likewise, you could be in Q1, you could be small and not physically developed. You could still be a Q4 and be small and not physically developed. So I don't think it's just about looking at those categories. I think it's very much taking the whole picture. And what we're always trying to do, which is always the most difficult thing, especially at a young age, when we're selecting players and you're trying to second guess what do we think this is going to look like in years to come or whatever. You're trying to make that, and that's where we don't always get decisions right. It's very, very difficult to do that because some players will go in and develop it different ways. Some players might develop not being in the football club and being elsewhere at that moment in time, but you don't have a glass ball to try and see that.
You said earlier about like loaning out a lot of the players for their development. Have you seen along the way players come back and it didn't work out? And what were the factors for that, if you have?
Yeah, I think it's always been the case. Look, I think we can talk about loans and we can talk about having a development team, etc. Loans, well, in my view, are loans or any structure you have a club is only going to work if you have a structure that there's some form of pathway towards the first team. So we could put them out on loan, we could not put them out on loan. We still just need to make sure there's some form of pathway that's going to allow them. So if they come back from loan, because we've had players who have had good loans, and I'm saying, again, how do you class a good loan and a bad loan? A good loan might be somebody that's going out and played a lot of games and has come back and done really well at the club that they've been at. But if we've still got a big first team squad at any club, how do you then get into the first team regardless? Or you could have some people that have been out that have not played many games at their loan club, but you know what? They've still really, really developed because they've been out there trying to compete in adult football every week. So I think there is bits around that. I think that it's not as easy as saying a good loan as when you've played lots of games, because you can have players that don't play loans but are still developing. I think it's just, and it's something we need to improve on and be better at moving forward, is our relationship with loan clubs and how we select clubs, how we monitor the goal. We had a guy called Neil Simpson, who was a former academy director here, obviously won the European Cup with Aberdeen. Neil was a loan manager, and Neil was fantastic at speaking with the clubs and then meeting with the players. The players that have been out on loan at the weekend, they would meet with Neil at the start of the week. He would go through their clips about how they need to develop, etc. So all that stuff's great. But ultimately, Marvin, for me, you need to make sure that bit between that loan club and then going into the first team, there has to be spaces. There has to be opportunities for people to go and do that. Now, I'm all for that pathway, but likewise, we've got to make sure that these players are good enough to do that. And the players need to make sure they're good enough to do that as well. So I think you can have anything you want set up, but we need to have that alignment between first team and the youth academy to allow us to do that.
At Aberdeen, so a player comes in on loan, a player comes in for a trial from a grassroots club. What are you and your coaches looking for in terms of taking that player on into your academy? What do you find? So, for example, if you don't take on a player and you say they're not quite ready for this standard yet, what is the difference between that grassroots level player and an actual academy player?
Yeah, sometimes I think, Marvy, it can be at different stages of when those trialists come in. I mean, we like a lot of clubs, and very much we're looking at players, looking at the four corner model with the technical, tactical, physical, and psychological. And a lot of times when we're doing the area we're at, although people think that we are quite unique, because, well, other than Cove Rangers, who are in League One up here, we're the only professional club in this area. Now, that's what we unique for us in the fact that we can select players. We've got teams like Dundee United and Dundee that'll come for players at this area as well, which is great competition. but we don't have a huge pool of players to select from. We can't really go down and select a 13-year-old in Glasgow because we don't expect them to travel up here 3 nights a week. So when we take players in, so there's a lot of factors we have to look at. But what we're always thinking about is, sometimes we talk about, I don't want to call it superpowers or whatever, but it's like, what is their super strength? Some of them might have a super strength. So you might have a player that you take in who's technically very, very good, maybe needs to improve maybe the physical aspect, but we want to give them time. I wouldn't say so much about the psychological aspects within a very, very young age. So with that 4-corner model and then the physical, tactical, we're not too worried about those things because we can help develop them as well. So if we have players that come in, I would say that the latter stages of our youth teams, so I'm probably talking 14s, 15s, 16s. Normally, if we are taking a trialist in at that time, this is not all the time, I can't say across the board. Normally, when they come in, they've come in because normally they're doing something maybe a little bit the tactical side, but the physical side, they've maybe got a real super strength. They might be quick, physical, strong, etc. But probably what they're behind a little bit on will be the technical side, because a lot of those guys will come in now at 14s, 15s, and 16s have been with our club for 5, 6, 7 years. So there has to be a bit of a catch-up technical wise. So we have like a homework program and a skill competences, I don't like saying that word, program to help our players improve technically. So when we take them in, when we take in somebody at a later stage, they know that there's that gap technically. They have to bridge that gap. But we're only taking them in because we think they've got a chance of doing that. Yeah. But they're going to have to do it extra to try and bridge that gap. So probably when they come in later in the programme, they're probably behind a little bit technically because not had 4 nights a week training, etc. So from that point, at the younger age groups, I would say the very young age groups, you're talking about 10s, 11, we're probably looking for a mix because without looking too far ahead, because I don't like doing that too much, but we need to think about different types. We can't just always bring in the technical player, etc. We have to then sometimes think about the physical type of player. If we've got somebody who thinks potential to go and play a centre-back who might have the size of the stature, like a goalkeeper. We're not going to take in a goalkeeper who's small. We're going to have to think about stature and how that's going to be. So in the younger age groups, I think it's more vast than what we're looking at. People often say, you only look for a certain type of player. I don't think we're in an area where we're like a Glasgow or an Edinburgh where we've got huge numbers to pick from. So we're not looking for a certain type of player. We're just looking for players that have got really good attributes that we think, if you look at a top game right now, you'll have some players who are outstanding in the technical and the tactical, but they might be lacking in the physical a little bit. So the clubs are trying to develop that part. I think people think you're going to come in, you're going to have something in every one of those 4 boxes and you're going to be top, but it's certainly not that at all.
What's your take on lateness? Like a player showing up consistently late, whether it's a younger or older player, or the player showing up late and just walking to the training session while it's being on, he's smiling.
I think it sounds like you were on a fly in the wall yesterday for our meeting that we had.
Oh, really?
When we're talking about our culture, I think we ended up talking about timekeeping for about 20 minutes.
Wow.
It's frustrating. Not frustrating the fact, like, what the discussion we had is that we've got to remember is that we have a lot of people that have to do a hell of a lot of travelling. We've got some guys that are travelling an hour and a half to get to training because of where we're located. So we have to understand that sometimes for parental situations, we're working, etc., families, it can be difficult. So we have to consider that, very much have to consider that. But then it's very much about that culture and the fact that it becomes part of that. When you're trying to think back to what we're talking about before, when somebody leaves our club, we want them to leave with values and things that they've learned, that it's important, because it's like our full-time players right now. We've tried to instill that in the academy, is that they can't turn up full-time for their work here at football. They might think, it's okay, we're not training at 11. No, you can't turn up into an office and be late for your work. You've got to be there and you've got to be on time. I know the players don't want to be, they are, because they're sometimes embarrassed. Because I know sometimes it might have been before somebody's late and a coach might, I'm not saying have a go at them, but might say something. But we've had to say, well, no, you can't do that. We don't know the circumstances in which they're late. And a lot of the times, the players that are late, they're normally embarrassed. They don't want to be late. But maybe a parent's got caught up at work, etc. But it does, I just think that with timekeeping, and one of my good friends, you'll probably know who he is. I used to play football with him, and his timekeeping was horrendous, absolutely horrendous. But see, as soon as I think it starts happening, I think it becomes a habit. I think it just becomes a habit that doesn't become an issue, and it's just and then you've probably been out with groups of friends before, and they go, "Ah, it's just Davey, he's going to be late again." And you're like, no, it just becomes a habit. I just don't get it. And I get flustered because I was probably the opposite. When I played football, my dad took me to football. My dad was one of those where, oh, we need to leave at this time because we might have a puncture. There might be a breakdown. There might be, I would have to be at the football at 12:30. We would be there at 11:30. Just, there was no need for it. But it's just standards. So it's difficult to, because we talked about yesterday, what is the consequence for somebody that's late all the time? I don't know. Should there be a consequence? Should they come out of training? Should they come out of a game?
What did you guys decide?
I don't think there was an outcome because, like I said before, it's like everybody's circumstances is different. Every circumstance is different. My youngest son, when he's going to his grassroots football, he's never been late once. Now, that's maybe easy because it's easy for us, but my son, he just doesn't like that. He does not want to be late. Just does not like it. And I think most of the kids are like that. And the parents don't want them to be late either. We understand that, but it's just trying to realise it does, for me, it becomes a bit of a habit. And then you don't want to be that one later on in life that it's still a bit of a joke. Oh, it's just, he's late again. So it is important. I think it's just that a part of the whole culture for me, Marvy, is that setting those standards and make sure you maintain them.
How important is sleep in football in regards to performance?
I think it's huge. A chance for the kids to revitalise, regroup. The amount of activity that we've got, the players sometimes do, even the ones when I was at the performance school, they were up early in the morning to get to school. You're sometimes training first thing, they'd be training at night. So the combination of sleep and good nutrition, I think, is absolutely vital. You can see the difference. You can see the difference of players. I can actually tell sometimes there might be a dip in performance, and quite often when you then start talking to players, not always all the time, but a lot of the time when you then start delving into things, there's a high percentage of time, especially when I was at performance school, and I recognise there a dip in performance. Sometimes coaches automatically see that, oh, he's not performing, and as you start delving into it, hadn't been sleeping, hadn't been eating properly, or hadn't been drinking properly. So it was all those things I think is huge. But again, you don't know as parents because your kid goes to bed. You don't know if they're still on their phones or whatever. I know there's some parents who don't allow them to have their phones and stuff in their bedrooms, etc. Because it's massive. I know the difference with my son. He's not playing at an elite club. I know the difference with him when he has a lot of sleep, but we've never been good at getting him to bed at a good time. I know when he has a better sleep, he performs better. There's no doubt about that. No doubt about it. And he's also less grumpy as well.
Is data important in football as well? What's your take on data?
I think data is very important very much in the context that it's taken as well. So, for example, if you take sports science data, you could have sports science data and you could talk about somebody people could look at sports science data and go, oh, look, he's hit his high speed intensity runs, he's hit 120 metres of that compared to somebody else. But that doesn't always tell that player's outperformed somebody else. That player could be out of position. So they have to have more high-speed runs than somebody else because they're out of position. You sometimes have some people, maybe game awareness. We had a player a number of years ago in national squads who was hitting those high-speed runs all the time, was hitting it. But what it was because he was watching the game. So if you imagine they've lost the ball, he's now watching the game go, and he's thinking he doesn't really want to go back here, so he's going to leave it as late as he can in the hope he doesn't need to. But then all of a sudden, the last minute, he's got to sprint. Now, if he had anticipated that earlier, he could have probably just jogged in, walked back in. He could have walked that 10, 20 metres and be ready in a position to go and affect that. But no, because he's maybe been a little bit lazy and trying to anticipate, right, I might not need to go back here. But then if you look at the stats, he's more high-speed runs than anybody.
Yeah.
We had somebody last year, we went down with Scotland and we played against England in the under-16s, and they'd never seen stats hit by a player in I'm not saying position, so I'll give it away. But the amount of distance he'd covered running was incredible. But he was doing too much running. He didn't need to get from one side of the pitch to the other to press the ball. When it then probably meant we had to take him off after 80 minutes, but his distances we'd never seen before in that age group. So data, but in the context that it comes with as well, you think it's bearing that. And that's a bit like now when we were recruiting players, our head of recruitment, performance director, etc., they will all use data, but it has to be in a context as well.
Do you guys work with the schools? Do you look at school reports?
Probably more so when I was at the performance school. We will do here in the fact that we want to do more of that now with players that are coming in full time, etc., to the football club. Next year we're going to have a bit more travel with regards our under 17 squad, because they'll still be in school, all those boys, but they're now going to be travelling Friday nights for games, so they're going to have to come out of school. So we're going to make contact with those schools to liaise with them and try and help, because some of them are going to have to go to school, so we'll have to work with them a bit more. With regards to the reports so far, no, I think sometimes we've had parents and sometimes head teachers at schools that have reached out to us just to say, look, this is a scenario. So we've also got a very good link with the SFA performance school that I worked at there. Derek Young now used to play for Aberdeen. Derek Young's now head coach there. So we've got that link there where if something's happened behaviour-wise in the school he has to pull them out of sessions here at school, do something similar here, when the fact that we have to work together to make sure that's the case. So I think it's something we always want to develop further with the schools, because it's important, because we need to realise as well is not everybody's going to be an academic genius. That's just part of life. But what you can have in football and what you can have in school is you can still strive to be the best you can. That doesn't mean you're going to be a straight A student or having the top grades all the time, but can you be the best you can be in each of those subjects?
Yeah.
I think that's something, I think, like we said before, it becomes a cultural thing, it becomes a habit. Whatever I go and try and do, I'm going to try and do the best I can. I mean, at school, when I was at the school, the performance school, the players, you had players that loved some subjects, absolutely hated other subjects, but I'm just like, well, it's part of life. There's stuff that I don't like doing in my job right now, but you have to do it. So it's just getting that. It's just part of life, part of the growing up, isn't it? Learning.
So have you seen a talented boy really, you looked at the kid and you thought, oh, this kid's on his way, and they throw it all away because of lack of discipline? If so, what is that lack?
Yeah, you've seen it. You've seen it in many, many different stages, and there's many different stages in life where you come to, whether that's a new group of friends that you meet when you go into secondary school, whether it's going down a different pathway of having a partner more than playing football, all those types of things. And so there's lots of different ways in which is that a discipline thing? I think people have to want to do what they're doing. How many times have you seen a player? You've probably seen it so many times yourself down in England before, where a top talent, maybe a coach maybe can't get the best of them, and then another team will take a chance in that player. Like, I know we'll get the best of it, I'll manage to do it. And then before they know it, they're at another club. And I'm not saying that becomes a lost cause. It has to become a point where a player has to want to do it for themselves. I think it's back to, as much as possible, is that we are trying to develop our culture here at the club, and the culture, like, see that the curriculum and everything you do with it, we're talking about the technical and the tactical, all those things are vital. But for me, the most important thing out of all that is having a culture that people recognise is that if you fall short of that, you're not going to be able to achieve that. Or if this is what we expect, this is the standards we expect, you do that. Because then you're able to actually take a player in and go, well, hold on a minute, we've told you that to allow you to be able to get to this, you need to be achieving this, or need to be behaving in this manner, or in this aspect here, you need to be bringing that. You can't come walking in every day like a grumpy teenager. You need to bring that energy. You need to bring that zest for life to come in and show what you can do. So I think the culture thing's huge, because I think, but again, what you need to realise, it's okay having culture and a bit of paper and up in the walls as people walk in. It's about the consistency of coaches and staff maintaining that culture, maintaining it, and being on top of it. And that's the hardest part for me, because you can have all the talent in the world, but if that bits don't, it becomes a real issue. And we will still continue to keep, even if someone's not hitting those things, because somebody's got so much talent, you'll still keep going in the hope that one day it might just click and it might drop. And it does with some. Unfortunately, from some others, it maybe doesn't. But I do think that culture thing's huge. I've had a big thing. The guys will laugh. The ones that are listening, probably this, will talk about the things with the sock, the Jack Grealish type sock thing. That's become a pandemic. It's
He
not
called
something
it
I
a
want.
pandemic.
Yeah, I don't think it's something that stops them performing or playing or whatever. And I know it's about individualisation in players, but we've just got standards. Like when you come and you play in Aberdeen's first team, and if you're making X amount of money, you can wear your socks however you want to wear your socks. But you're in an academy right now, Because I'm getting to the stage now, you see some players, not just in our academy, I see it in other academies as well, is that the socks are getting rolled under the shin pads so that they have to look a certain way. And sometimes I'm watching games and thinking, God, I'm more worried about how their socks looks and how some play. But that's against just standards. So we're taking those bits away and go, look, you don't need to worry about all those bits. As long, this is the standards you must meet when you walk on the pitch. Kit, your behaviour, everything. And you know what? See if you just follow that, that becomes easy. And then all you need to worry about is just play and perform. So yeah, it sounds simple, but yeah, it's not always easy. The socks always seem to end up back down the ankles.
Stuart's like, all this fluffy stuff, just play the game, go through somebody. In saying that as well, what do you think the biggest distraction is that stops young players becoming pros? Have you seen something that is distracting players right now from becoming pros?
I don't know if it's something that's distracting. I think we have to be honest, even as a football club here, I think not distracting, because I still think you've got players that are coming through the younger age groups. Everyone wants to, we've got so many local players here that want to play for Aberdeen Football Club. Not everyone in our club here supports Aberdeen Football Club, but a high percent of our players want to play for Aberdeen Football Club. It's their dream, like it was my dream when I was younger. My dream was to play for Aberdeen. My dream was to play for Scotland. So I don't think there was that. I think what can be distracting, and I don't know if anyone at the club will make us cut this bit out, but all I'm saying is I don't think it's any different across the whole of Scotland and even football as a whole, that what can for young players is once they become into full-time football is you have to have that burning desire that you want to go and play for Aberdeen's first team or you want to go and play first team football. We need to still make sure as a club, as an academy, as a first team, that we still have that light glimmering showing that you've got that opportunity here. See if that starts to fade away. I think it becomes tough. Now, it's easy because we can say, right, every time a young player comes into our club, a young 18-year-old, a young 19-year-old, and they're across training with the first team, they've got to show the desire, they've got to show the determination, they've got to have the enthusiasm. I agree with all that. If you know you've got no chance of getting something, it's very difficult to keep trying to get to it, innit? If you think, right, this is impossible. No, I'm not saying that at this club, because we've had guys like Jack McKenzie, Jack Milne, Connor Barr, and all these guys that have done that. But we want to, and we're trying to do as a club right now, is make that an even better opportunity for people to do. So does that make sense? If you imagine you're always trying to get something, but you've got a chance of getting it. We need to make sure that we give them that hope that, yes, you are, if you perform, if you're following what we're asking with regards to culture, if you're performing to an ability, a performance and a standard, you have that chance to get that. And I think if you don't have that, you don't feel you've got that, I think you lose a little bit, whether you're a integrated first team player or whether you're a young player trying to make it through. We have to make sure that that fire keeps burning for them, and we give them that opportunity. It's not always easy, but I think you want that. You definitely want that.
How important is resilience in football, and what does resilience mean to you?
I think it's for us, and again, it's part of our culture model moving forward, is that the resilience is in there, because people often talk about the players that make the pathway and go with, they've had some form of blip along the way, or they've had some form of bump they've had to overcome, etc. Yeah, there's some that have had that, but there's also had some that have just, it's been pretty good. So I think, again, it's just down to individuals. There's different types of things with regards resilience, and lots of different things in the way that can look like. Is that a player playing up an age group to be challenged to playing up an age group? Is it somebody being put in a situation when we go away and play in a tournament, you've got to take a penalty kick that to them is a huge thing because it's in a tournament, etc. So I think the resilience side of things is important. It's always trying to think about, right, how do we challenge players? How do we make, because it's not always possible to make things resilient, put things in place that's going to help to make them resilient as such. So I think there's a different pathway for all. I think there's been this common thing across Europe right now that they've been looking at players and going, all those players that have made it have had some form of resilience in their life. I think it's easy to go back and map out somebody's pathway and go, oh yeah, he had that tough bit. But if you actually went back and you talked to some people, they go, oh no, that bit, I didn't actually find that bit too tough. It was okay. So I think it is vital though. I think it is important. And I think sometimes when you've had that, when you overcome that, that might be something as simple as an injury, and you come back from that and you've learned, you come through that process. So I think there'll always be those little bits, and the resilience will help players to move forward. But yeah, it's funny because it is a subject that's brought up all the time, that it's too easy for players and they come through the pathway and they've got this and they've got the great facilities here at Aberdeen Football Club, and but they have to get here 4 nights a week. They have to finish school. They have to get now. People say, "Oh, I know that's easy." It's hard work. People think it's easy. If, like I said, it's not a boot camp, but it's hard because we're getting players having to come here, train. Some of them travel an hour and a half home to get home, get up, go to school in the morning, etc. So they're putting a hell of a lot. We talked about it yesterday in our meeting. People were saying is that should we put sacrifice in there? And I'm like, no, I don't think these young people are sacrificing things because they want to play football. They enjoy playing it. I think a sacrifice is something you're having to give up for something else, but I don't think they're doing that. Yes, they're having to maybe not go out so much in evenings and stuff because they're training 3 nights.
But maybe the sacrifice is giving up all their friendships and their stuff to do the training. Maybe that's what they mean. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I just don't think the sacrifice is a word, because I think that's almost giving up something. You're almost being forced to sacrifice something to do something you enjoy.
Right.
I think it's still important that they make that time out elsewhere to tie up with those friends, etc. So I don't think a lot of them would talk about sacrifice. I think it's just looking at it and we're going, look, well, this is what's required if you want to go and try and do that. Now, again, that's back to me. I'm only contradicting myself, is that that's what you need to do to get there. But let's enjoy this pathway along the way as well. This bit can be good and enjoyable. Like I said before, it's not a boot camp.
Do you speak a lot to the first team manager about the boys? What boys are coming through the academy at all?
Yeah, I think in the time we've got there, obviously we've got a good link here. The fact that I've got myself as academy director, then obviously the development team, got development team coaches, a team of multidisciplinary staff there as well. We have a weekly meeting with the manager, planning meeting as well. And then we have, tail end of last season, we were having meetings with the guards players who are out on loan, players that might be making a step up to the first team, etc. So it's about having that link. And again, I think the managers come from a background of taking young players into clubs and developing them. So he wants to do that further as well. He's also on board in the fact as a club that we want to try and improve that pathway to the first team. We've probably got too many players across the whole of the club right now to make sure that pathway is as, I don't want to say clear, because it's not a case of us clearing that pathway and then on you go into the first team. The players have to make sure they're ready for it, and we need to make sure they're ready. So I think there's a real desire between the alignment between the first team and the academy that we want to make that work. Does it need to be improved? Yeah, very much so. And it's what we've been working on over certainly the last year or so. We've kind of developed that even further with some people that's non-executive directors and the performance director, etc. We're really working towards a model right now that helps us to elevate maybe that opportunities for players in the first team.
All the boys are in the academy trying to become pros at Aberdeen. What does that pro look like in your mind, characteristic-wise, mentally? What is it you're looking for? What do you see as a model pro?
Good question. The fact that if I went and lined up all the development boys right now that's here, or if you were just to stand at the door and watch them all walking in this morning, everyone came in with a completely different characteristic to the next ones, because we have player profiles here at the club and what we expect an Aberdeen Football Club player to look like. If you're a left back, a right back, whatever, but also what they should look, how they should act. But everybody's different from that point of view. But there'll be core things that we expect about bringing that enthusiasm, determination, etc. Those things will have to be, but you want them to have that individualization as well. I think it's funny though, because I think it's a common thing. You've probably seen it yourself when you see plenty of 16, 17-year-old boys now, and they walk along, you see them coming into the club and think, oh God, they look like they're coming in here for the worst day of their lives. But sometimes that's just the way young kids are walking about sometimes. But what we're trying to say is, well, that's okay, but see, when you walk across over at that first team and you've been called across there, you can't walk across like that. You're going across there and you're shaking the manager's hand, you're showing enthusiasm, you're doing whatever. That first impression, the young boys that came into our academy this year, came in full time. I said, on that first day that you walk into the building, you want to make an impression. Make an impression. Like, everyone will know them because they've been here, but make an impression every day you come in. When you say hello to somebody at reception, you greet them in the morning. When you go to get your lunch, make an impression so that people talk about you. And you don't just get talked about because you're a good player. People start going, he's a good person and he's this. So everybody's different, but I think there is core things that you should expect that should happen. Is there sometimes that some of those things can be overlooked? And again, this is probably me back to maintaining standards. If you are seen as the top talent, you're maybe not quite here, and you could have somebody here that's maybe not quite, but they maybe bring that enthusiasm every day. They bring that, but you've got a little bit more ability. That's a tough period. And I think it's easy because we can then say for a player like that, they should be better than that. They should learn to. But that's maybe quite tough for them as well, because they potentially know that they're a top player. It says it's trying to maintain that stance, but everybody's different. I think it's just making sure that those core principles on and off the pitch we're trying to adhere to. Everybody will have different ways of that.
Right. So in that instance, good person or good talent, what wins it for you?
I think if I was going down in percentages, I'd probably go good person as such, because I think you have a lot more avenue and scope to develop and pathway, etc. Because if you're going from club to club, I sometimes think your reputation is only as good as your last changing room. So regardless of ability, we was the same when we was at Scotland. We would be trying to select players. We'd have to select a squad of 20 players, but we'd have a list. We were sitting there going, we've got 32 that we think should be in this group. But then you'd be trying to find out more information. How is a player? So you would then be selecting a player over how they are with the group. This other player that we've left out is as good as that player. But see, when he's in the group, he's sometimes affected that. You still want, don't get us wrong, if there's somebody there that ability is, yeah, you can't let that go. But that's the one you're keeping in. You're trying to change. You're trying to influence, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But I think wherever that, and I think Marvy, in any walk of life, whether it's football or work, etc., you can have great ability in your job and etc. But you're probably sat in yourself in plenty of times in an office, but you're sitting in an office and people think, what about him over there? The one that they don't talk. Hey, some lines of work you might get away with that. But I think if you're a good person and you're doing that, I think you have more opportunities. I'm not saying it's always the case, but I think you get more opportunities. You get a better reputation. If you leave a club and they're more wanting to take you back in 10 years' time to be a coach or a former player to come back in because you're a good person, very much so.
Brilliant. What have you learned about this job that you didn't see come in before you got into it?
That I'm not much on the pitch now, training wise. I'm just in my office. No, well, if you think I came in as kind of head of coaching, so I had a good balance there. I came in as head of coaching, so I was still developing coaches. I was on the pitch. It's my biggest learning point from the last 2 years. That from the start of the guys, the younger dudes come back in a few weeks' time, I'm going to be on the pitch more than I am, more for my own mental health than anything, because we realise as when the position we're in, and I remember lots of people telling us, and even Gavin was in the job previously, he actually used to say it, like he was in head of coaching as well prior to becoming academy. He says you'll enjoy the head of academy job is better than the academy director job. Now the reason for that is just because when you're in the director's job, you're dealing with a lot of things, because ultimately we realise is you're dealing with a lot of young players between our sort of under 10s to under 16s, 17s, 18s. We've got 110, 115 players. And in our pre-academy, we've got 60, 70 players. Then you double that with the amount of parents you're dealing with. Everybody has different things going on in their lives. The young players, the parents, coaches, everybody. So a lot of your stuff as academy directors, you are trying to push things on the pitch, but you're trying to push ideas and things. And then your head of coaching, like my head of coaching, Mark Slater, my youth phase manager, Callum McDonald, my foundation phase manager, Scott Duncan. I've got Chris Maver, head of operations, Kevin Stewart, goalkeeping, Stuart Duff, all those guys that are taking care of things. I have to rely on them to take care of a lot of that stuff on the pitch and trust in them. And I do trust in them because I'm dealing with a lot of other stuff that's off the pitch. And it's not stuff that's less important. It's stuff that's very, very important. It's stuff that's going on in people's lives, and it's things. And we're also trying to push things further at strategic level with regards to partnerships, etc. So it wasn't that I didn't know that was the case. I didn't just realise that, understand how many lack of hours there is in the day to get done what you want to get done. I probably didn't realise by just living a mile and a half along the road that I would be here as much as I am. I think my wife said to me, I always talk about how much hours and I'm away a lot and etc. She goes, you moan about it, she says, but you love it. And I do really. I'm just the type of guy that sometimes doesn't look like I'm enjoying myself, but it's good. But there's a lot of difficult things you deal with as well, because at the end of the day, you're dealing with people's lives. You're trying to help things, and regardless how we are trying to make the environment as relaxed as possible, it can be pressure, and we're trying to reduce that, and we don't always get that right. So you're trying to support families, you're trying to support people, and it is very. We can have days where things are great, and something could happen, or something you find out that you need to support somebody, and it can really affect things. It can really affect things. So it's difficult. It's very much up and down, and sometimes something good might happen, but then there's something else going in the background. So you don't want to show that. You want to show that person you're delighted for them, but you also don't want to. So it's tough. I think I'm learning from that. I think I'm getting better with it. I do need to try and manage my time better with regards to that and spend a bit more time with the families. But I think they've said I've been saying that for 2 years now.
Final 4 questions for you, all in one. What qualities do you need to be a good academy player, academy coach, academy scout, and academy manager?
I think academy scout, the main thing for me is that anybody could go to a pitch and watch and identify and pick the best player on the pitch. I think the biggest attribute for me as a scout is somebody that's able to go and select a player that has a high level of potential. Now that's not easy. Now that can be difficult. Anyone can go and pick the best player and take the best player into the club, etc. It's about going. And then even if you take a player in and they might not be at a certain level, it's you believing that I think they've got the potential. And you might have to sell that to the coaches and sell that to myself and sell that to my head of coaching, etc. But having that ability to look beyond that better player and go, the best player that you see on the pitch, who has the most potential in years to come? I think as a coach, I think it's about experiences, but we have a vast range of coaches. I spoke about there about my youngest son who's 17 that's coaching here, but we have, I don't want to talk about the oldest coaches that are here, but a guy recently, Jim Crawford, that just retired, I think was in the latter 70s. So everyone has different experiences, and when they come in, the difference is when you come into a club like Aberdeen Football Club, you have a lot of support as coaches. We have a curriculum, we have ways in which we want to coach, etc. So I think the biggest thing for me is it's not about being a coach. It's about being a mentor for young people, and trying to be as relaxed as possible. Again, I'm contradicting myself because I want us to be as relaxed as possible, but I want us to ensure every day that we are in here, we are trying to promote a will to win. So it's getting that balance. So it's good. I think you have a mixture of both. You have a mixture of young people that have come through a coaching pathway, and the fact that they left school and they're coming through a coaching pathway, etc., and they develop that. And then they've still got their life experiences to come. So that's good. I think that's good from that. And then you have people that have had life experiences, they've got children, etc. So they're able to mentor those coaches as well. So I think that's important. I don't know if I've actually give you, but I think as a coach, I think it's about thinking about the person first, not thinking them as football players, thinking them as young people. Every time a young player comes into our academy and they walk in to see the coaches at night, they shake hands when they come in, they shake hands when they leave. It's just little things like we're actually saying, when you shake their hand, do you say, how are you? How have you done today? How was school, etc. So that type of thing to make them feel from there. Player-wise, I just want players to come with an enthusiasm to just come and want to play. Now, that'll not happen all the time because we have players that come in and thrive on this type of environment. We have players that come in that enjoy the environment but find it a little bit more difficult when they go home at the end of the night. They'll be in the car and, I didn't do well tonight, and they'll find that tough. That's difficult. So I think it's just them realising that, but I think just come and then bring that enthusiasm. Enjoy the moment. Enjoy what's happening now. Don't try and wish your life away what's happening later on with regards to contacts, etc. Enjoy the moment right now. I think what I would say to that. What's the one I've
Academy
missed?
manager or director?
Certainly in the time that I've came in, because when I came in as head of coaching and I was an academy director and I was a bit of both, I was kind of covering both roles. I think is not a realisation, because I know I have an unbelievable group of staff here, dedicated people that want to work for Aberdeen Football Club, have a real desire to work for Aberdeen Football Club, and I need to trust them to be able to go on and do what they're doing. And I said to the guys yesterday, we have to remember is that we'll have part-time coaches that work for us right now. Everybody has different strengths and weaknesses, but how good we are seen as an academy or them. So if I take my youth phase lead, who's responsible for 13s to 16s, my foundation phase from 10s upwards, you're only as good as the part-time coach you've got underneath you. So if there's things that they need to improve, you need to drive that. Like I'm only as good as my head of coaching and what he's putting out to those guys, from etc. So we're all part of that together. So I think for me, it's me trusting in those people to go and do that. Me trusting to be able to go away, because I've not really taken a holiday yet, is to go away, is that I can trust in those guys to do that. So it's understand that. But that's just because I'm passionate at the job and I want things to be right. We don't get things all right all the time, definitely not. The biggest thing I need to learn to be better at is not dwelling on the things and the mistakes we've made. We just have to learn from them and move on. So yeah, I think just trusting the people I've got around me, because I've got fantastic staff, that then maybe allows me to concentrate on specific things. But so I think just having a good deal of patience, but having the time to take the time to listen, etc. Because you get caught up in some important stuff and you maybe forget that all those little bits are really, really important. Me just walking on the pitch and going seeing the under 12s training at 4 o'clock when I think I need to be just dealing with something more important than there. That's not more important. The kids out in the pitch are the most important things.
Is there anything that I haven't covered that you'd like to say?
No, I don't think so. We realise that being in a part of a football club, an elite academy or any academy, there's a huge demands on parents and players. We just want to ensure that across the board that people try and relax in that environment and not look ahead too much. Yes, it'll be easy for me to say we're not putting pressure on players. We're trying not to, but that's always going to be the case. But it is very much about enjoying the moment and what's going on and what's happening, and trying to just thrive in that environment. It's never easy because there is always that little bit of pressure. But yeah, no, I think it's good. We're in a good moment right now for Aberdeen Football Club, winning the Scottish Cup. And the only disappointing thing was we won the Scottish Cup and then the season ended and everyone went away. So yeah, it's been a good few months up here in Aberdeen from winning the Scottish Cup.
Well done. And thank you very much for giving me your time and very insightful information. I've actually enjoyed this discussion. So thank you for coming on.
No, thank you for having me. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you guys for tuning in to this episode. Hopefully I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.
This episode is sponsored by the PV Consultant, the go-to business strategist for salon owners and solo beauty professionals who want to grow smarter, not harder. If you're ready to boost your visibility and start attracting more clients today, download the PV Consultant's free Google cheat sheet at www.thepvconsultant.net/cheat sheet. It's packed with simple, powerful tips to get your business seen by the right people. A big thank you to the PV Consultant for supporting today's episode and helping more businesses shine.